I'd like to welcome you all to the 2024 Democratic Candidates Forum. My name is Harvey Roach. I'm chair of the County Democratic Leadership Committee, and I will be your moderator for the evening. Just a brief word about the format this evening. We're recording tonight's Zoom event. Our first candidate to speak will be Joe Salerno, who is our Democratic nominee for the U.S. House of Representatives, New Jersey, 2nd District. Joe will speak to us. Then, in the best Washington tradition, he will yield the floor to Congressman Andy Kim, our Democratic candidate for Senate. Congressman Kim has a very tight schedule and will only have about 10 minutes to speak to us following floor votes in the House before he must leave for another commitment. Not to worry, though, Joe will remain with us for about another 15 minutes or so for a question and answer period before he has to leave for a scheduled event. I would ask everyone in the audience to please remain on mute. You'll be able to type your questions in the chat box, and I will be able to read them to Joe. These are two top flight candidates. I know you will join me in welcoming each as I complete their introductions. Thank you all for attending, and let's get started. Joe Salerno is running for Congress to work for all of South Jersey, to deliver on the promise of a freer, fairer, and more prosperous America. He spent his career creating jobs as a businessman, solving problems as an engineer, and protecting rights as an attorney. Joe understands that this election is about two different visions for the future of South Jersey and our country. One that is focused on the past, or one that is focused on the future. We are fortunate to have a candidate with the experience, compassion, understanding, and fight to stand up for the people of the 2nd District and for the United States of America. It is my pleasure to introduce the next congressman representing the 2nd District of New Jersey, Joe Salerno.
Harvey, thanks so much for the introduction, and thank you all for bearing with me. I don't think I'm currently quite as busy as Congressman Kim, but it's been a bit of a whirlwind as we race back from Washington, D.C., where we met with the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. We met with the new Democratic Coalition. We met with Legal Conservation Voters and the Blockchain Association, and also met with some supporters down there. So got back just in time to make it here to Atlantic City, where I am tucked away in a classroom using my hotspot. So I really am crossing my fingers that this works out. But I am Joe Salerno, and I am very honored to be the Democratic nominee for New Jersey's 2nd Congressional District. And for those of you who don't know me, and I do appreciate that introduction, Harvey, but if you don't know me, it's because I am a first-time candidate. I've spent a lifetime doing what most of us spend our time doing, is working hard for our family. And I've done that as a lifelong New Jersey resident. My wife, Della, and I raised 4 grown children here. They're all New Jersey public school graduates, as Della and I are also. I was trained as a mechanical engineer. Spent a good bit of my early career making motors and gearboxes and valves for the aerospace industry. But I was fortunate enough to run several businesses ranging from a machine shop that made parts for military aircraft to a software startup that used blockchain technology in support of the financial markets. And in my spare time, I ran our local Pop Warner Football League, and I'm thrilled that somehow Tim Walz has made coaching young people a political credential for high office. And I also went to law school at night and earned my law license. Although I have not practiced, I did spend a great deal of time studying our constitutional history and constitutional design, which has become my primary avocation. And listen, I decided to run because I, like many people, have grown very frustrated with the tenor of the conversation in Washington, that too many politicians are content to fight with each other while good people struggle here in South Jersey. And frankly, I don't know how we resolve those struggles by looking backwards. I always thought that what made America great was our ability to look forward and to make progress and to solve problems while respecting those core ideals that really make America great, which is the fact that we are a government of laws and not of kings or churches, and that we're all equal under those laws. We all deserve the same protections. None of us are less than anyone else. And we each possess the liberty to live our lives as we please. And no one should have an opinion on how we live those lives, so long as we don't intrude on the rights of others to do the same. And frankly, that's why things like Project 2025 just confuse me, because it's not about working together to solve problems for the good people of South Jersey while respecting those ideals. It's somehow about unwinding the progress we've made for decades. In fact, I don't think they should even call it Project 2025. Perhaps they should call it Project 2015, before same-sex marriage, or maybe Project 1973, before Roe v. Wade and a woman's right to choose. Maybe even Project 1964, before the Civil Rights Act, or given its assault on organized labor, perhaps Project 1935, before the National Labor Relations Act, or even given all the calls to drain the swamp, we might call it Project 1883, before the Civil Service Reform Act. And my own personal favorite would be Project 1798, where under the Alien Act, a president could deport any non-citizen deemed dangerous. Now, we need something new. We need a new kind of representation in Congress, the kind of representative who won't be boxed in by those traditional political patterns of liberal versus conservative, or management versus labor, or business versus consumer, or even, dare I say, Republican versus Democrat. It was 70 years ago when Jack Kennedy told us that even back then, our nation could no longer tolerate such lazy political habits. He called instead for courage in politics, and not just courage to defend principle, but the courage to compromise. He explained that we can resolve the clash of interests without conceding our ideals, because, in his words, there are few, if any, issues where all of the truth and all of the right and all of the angels are on just one side. And we so desperately need courage in Congress these days. We need courage to confront the serious problems we face as a nation. And these problems are largely nonpartisan, right? We have to fight inflation. We have to provide economic security for those in need. And we have to defend reproductive rights, fight climate change, stop foreign aggression. We have to fix the border and control the deficit. And maybe more important than anything, we have to restore hope of a prosperous and happy future for younger generations. But frankly, standing in our way are unserious and cowardly people like Jefferson Van Drew. He pretends serious problems don't even exist, that climate change is a hoax, and that Russia, well, they'll never attack beyond Ukraine. And they offer simplistic solutions like build a wall or deport millions of people or drill, baby, drill. And before anybody gets even a moment to think, he distracts us with calls to anger, to jealousy, and to prejudice. And worst of all, he's willing to sacrifice those ideals that bind us together as a nation, only to serve his vain partisan ambition. what I want to present to the good people of South Jersey is a clear choice. The choice between a career politician who wants to see partisan acrimony continue, who calls Democrats evil people, versus myself, an engineer who spent a lifetime solving difficult problems and who wants to get to work doing the same, solving problems for the people of South Jersey. So that's what I would love to do as your representative in Congress, and happy to answer questions on any of these important issues that face the district.
All right. Thank you, Joe. Any questions, Ken?
No, no questions.
All right, we've got a couple of minutes here. Michelle Post from the Atlantic City Press has joined us tonight. Michelle, do you have any questions that you'd like to pose to Mr. Salerno?
Well, yeah, sure. Hey there, Mr. Salerno. I was hoping that you could talk maybe a little bit about your specific approach to fixing border issues. And also I wanted to ask if you have any thoughts about, Congressman Van Drew has been focusing on, he's been getting, he says, a lot of complaints from people who feel that their electric bills are too high this summer, and some of them suspect that the new smart meters could be at fault. And being a tech guy, I was hoping you could address that a little bit and talk about, if you were to win, how you would deal with complaints like this from constituents.
All right, so let's take the second one first, and please, Michelle, call me Joe, and don't let me forget that we have to get back to border issues. But listen, it's desperately painful, the high electric bills that we all face this summer. I think certainly we want to do testing of smart meters to make sure that that is not possibly at the cause of those higher rates. But I think we need to be realistic that the Board of Public Utilities had reviewed and blessed that rate increase, and the logic that was used at the time was really to try to control excess energy use. So the very complicated rate structure that's in place has escalators. As each of us use more electricity, the incremental rates increase. That was a bargain that probably seemed like a good idea at the time, until we see dramatically high temperatures for over an extended period that left us all shocked. And I certainly sympathize with everyone who's facing those bills, myself included. But I think it calls for a couple of things. It calls for a little bit more forward thinking, right? It's fairly easy now to react with great incredulity about the high rates that we're all facing. But it takes a little bit more from an elected representative to get out in front of these situations and try to put into the rate structure some protections against all of us who now are going to see these kind of problems more and more, right? If we are going to ignore climate change, as incumbent Jefferson Van Drew would have us do, we're only going to see higher temperatures over and over again. Well, what are we going to do about it, right? He's certainly an opportunist who loves to stand alongside people when they are aggrieved, but does little to nothing to actually resolve those problems. So the answer, Michelle, is to revisit that rate structure, see if we can't put in compensations so that when we all face higher temperatures, and it's not just about personal energy use that might be higher than others might would like we want to encourage conservation, but that isn't exactly appropriate when it's 95 degrees for 2 weeks straight. But we also need to get back to the larger issues that we need to fight climate change. We can't ignore this. And if we're going to protect against these kind of difficult times where demand is far exceeding supply, we have to install new renewable sources of electricity and get them attached to the grid. We can't just pretend that's not a problem. So I I hope no one feels that I'm indifferent to the struggles of people who are facing these high energy bills. But I think this is something where we should have protected the barn before we let the horses loose. And when it comes to the border, let's face it, this is extraordinarily frustrating because Senators Langford, Sinema, and Murphy had spent months crafting a bipartisan, let's not call it solution, but a bipartisan bill that addressed many of the problems that are facing us at the border, that brought more resources to border control, that brought more resources to adjudicating asylum claims, that gave ability to throttle the amount of the number, pardon me, of immigrants coming through border crossings, and so on and so forth. There were so many good aspects to that bill, but we know that Donald Trump didn't want to see the problem improve. He didn't want to see things get better until, unless and until he became president. So his minions, accepting orders, followed Trump's advice and made sure that bill wasn't addressed. So long answer to controlling the border is all of the above, right? We absolutely do need to have orderly immigration. But we should do it without demonizing immigrants. Immigrants are a vital force, not just to our culture, but also to our economy. And the demonizing of immigrants and calling them vermin who are poisoning the blood of the nation, which is what we are seeing from Donald Trump, is absolutely loathsome and should be rejected by all good people.
Host, do you have any other questions?
Not for now. I'm really curious to hear what other people's questions are.
All right. Joe, we have a question from Terry Andrew. She's interested to know if you have a plan or ideas for mental health awareness due to the jump in suicide rates, particularly among young people all over the country.
Well, I don't know if it goes to awareness per se, but we had a wonderful candidate who educated us a lot on issues of mental health 4 years ago, and Amy Kennedy, and I actually spent some time with her husband Patrick while I was in Chicago at the Democratic National Convention. And I really think the first order of business is to have mental health among the covered services in the Affordable Care Act. This is the separation of mental health from physical health seems utterly illogical to me, and desperately needed to be put into force in short order.
Could you talk about the difference between your platform on women's health care and how it differs from your opponents?
Well, look, Van Drew has now, it's astounding to me that a person who's reached maturity could embrace such a contrary opinion on reproductive health. So Van Drew, as elected in 2018 to Congress, said, "I am strongly and unequivocally pro-choice." He went on to say any efforts to weaken that right would face his fierce opposition. And that earned him an F rating from the Susan B. Anthony lobby, and an A rating from Planned Parenthood. Well, those are upside down now, as he's now voted against distribution of Plan B mifepristone. He actually voted against the Right to Contraception Act. I mean, it's staggering. I mean, so, and when you look at the EMTALA decision, and just by way of explanation, we now see this conflict in states where they have basically complete abortion bans and federal law that requires a standard of care to be given by hospitals when women arrive at emergency rooms. And a standard of care sometimes in health-threatening situations requires an abortion. And yet in these states, women can't get an abortion, so they are being flown out of state while they're in distress in order to get the treatment they need. This is why having federal legislation to restore Roe v. Wade is essential, and we need to strike whatever balance is necessary to get those rights embedded in federal law immediately. And Van Drew shows no interest in anything other than leaving this fundamental freedom to states that can actually force women to bear children of their rapists. This is an unacceptable condition in a country that values liberty.
With the seasonal nature of so many businesses along the barrier islands, what is your position on support for federal support for those businesses along the coast?
Well, I'm unclear on what particular kind of support you're thinking there, Harvey.
Well, with the Small Business Administration, federal support with loans, disaster relief after storms. There's always a problem in Congress whenever there's a need for relief money, that kind of thing, to make that on a more permanent basis where it can't be challenged every time it comes up, because so many of the businesses live and die by the 4-month season, and the other businesses in the area depend on those businesses as well. So, what kind of programs can you or what kind of help could you envision that would help shore that up?
Yeah, well, listen, Harvey. One of the things about running for Congress is it doesn't suddenly make you expert in all things. All right, I do remember distinctly some of the opposition to federal disaster relief after Sandy, even though their districts had received such FEMA help and do so routinely. Look, I'd have to be educated on the need to change the status quo, but I certainly would go back to the need to start taking assertive steps to redress climate change, because we will only see all of the threats to our coastline intensify over time if we don't start making those earnest attempts to start to slow the negative effects of climate change.
Thank you.
But I will add, and just to add on, I mean, obviously beach replenishment has been a big issue, but I do feel like the ratios that have been established in the past, but the federal share versus state share versus local share have been working for decades. And as long as we have sand that we can pull offshore and dump onto our beaches, we must continue. But boy, I'd much rather see our climate slow the pace of beach erosion, and so we can have this for generations.
Okay. We did have one question. Your position on this march towards the banning of the books and the restriction on what's being taught in the schools about the history of our country. Your position on that?
Yeah, look, banning of books. I mean, so there seems to be two main thrusts of people who have real difficulty with understanding the First Amendment, protection of speech. You know, I feel like Justice Brandeis spoke authoritatively on this issue more probably 100 years ago. That the only answer to harmful speech is more speech. So I am stridently opposed to banning books based on content other than the established exceptions to the First Amendment. So it's especially troubling because it seems like lots of this book banning is intended to further marginalize already marginalized communities, right? So, Van Drew has talked about the LGBTQ community as it's okay to live your life as you'd like, but so long as you don't impose your ideas on anyone else, which, it's frankly astounding to hear that kind of rhetoric, because all anyone wants is tolerance for people who make choices different than Van Drew would like them the way he might make choices for others. So having content that encourages a tolerant society is absolutely essential. And telling an honest history that's been characterized as somehow a negative with the acronym CRT. I mean, critical race theory. I kind of lay out to anyone to offer me a definition with a negative connotation. I mean, to me, the honest history of Black people in our country is really important for us to keep top of mind for all generations. I remember my own education about Reconstruction really didn't start until law school, when I took an entire semester course on Dred Scott. I remember maybe a half a page in a high school social studies text, with a carpetbagger's image. Look, there's so much there to unpack, right? To whitewash our history does no one any good, right? The truth is vitally important. That's how we're going to learn to get better.
Okay. Thank you very much. We do have Congressman Kim on, so on behalf of our county chair, Marie Bliston, I'm very honored to introduce our next candidate, who will be our next U.S. Senator, Andy Kim. His experience as a congressman from the 3rd District, his values, dedication, and commitment to representing our working families, our businesses, our veterans, our environment, our seniors, and human and civil rights for all are his basis for pursuing this seat. U.S. Senate candidate Andy Kim has championed legislation to lower drug prices for our seniors, expand Medicare to include dental, vision, and hearing coverage, co-sponsored the Equality Act to guarantee civil rights protections, led legislation to address our veterans and their families, supported the legislation providing assistance to small businesses, and has dedicated himself to make sure that women make their own health care choices. We all remember that it was Congressman Kim who demonstrated his respect for our democracy as he worked to clean up the aftermath of the January 6th attack and insurrection fueled by former President Trump. We simply cannot have another Trump supporter in Congress, which his Republican opponent is. And the Cape May County Regular Democratic Organization proudly supports Andy Kim for our U.S. Senate seat. Congressman Kim, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks everybody for giving me a chance to be able to say a few words. And I'm down here by the Capitol. We're doing our best to try to navigate these difficult times as Speaker Johnson continues to put, extreme measure after extreme measure, up for votes and really not tackling the issues focused that the American people want us to focus on, which is why I was glad to hear Joe Salerno talking before I was able to jump on. I certainly hope people get behind him. We need to be able to flip the House of Representatives, get a Speaker Hakeem Jeffries in, and be able to have the kind of majority that can hopefully work with a President Kamala Harris, as well as me and others in the Senate, and be able to deliver for people. I just want to say, thank you. It's been a really humbling experience over this last year, running for the U.S. Senate position. I'll be honest with you, it's not something that I ever thought that I would have a shot to do, but just in general, it has been a real honor to be able to serve New Jersey in the U.S. House of Representatives, and I'd be humbled to be able to have this chance to step up for the U.S. Senate. But what I'm trying to do is really focus in on a couple of key things that I keep hearing about from families across New Jersey, which is that, they want a government that is focused on them and trying to solve problems in their lives. They don't want a Congress and a Senate that is just about, this political gamesmanship that I think so many people are just sick and tired of. There's just so much toxicity within our politics. And, I see it with the work that I do. I told you I'm down here at the Capitol. I work alongside some people who are more interested in being social influencers rather than lawmakers. We need people who are substantive, people that can bring expertise, people who are going to take this job seriously. I get to work a job whose job description is in the Constitution of the United States. Like that is a deeply humbling experience. And me, a son of immigrants, a public school kid, gets to be able to, work a job that only 12,000 Americans in the history of our nation have done. And in the Senate, only 2,000 Americans in the history of our nation have worked in the US Senate. That should try to push us to hold ourselves up to the highest level of standard, the highest level of accountability, the highest level of integrity. And that is what I hope to be able to deliver, is that I think people in New Jersey, are hungry for a new generation of leadership to step up. They want people who are going to be workhorses, not show horses. They want people that are going to just roll out their sleeves and actually try to solve the problems like high cost of living. Try the challenges that we face when it comes to housing prices, healthcare prices, food prices, and certainly for Cape May Democrats and folks across South Jersey. I hope to be the first U.S. senator from South Jersey since I think about World War II. I think it's about time that our part of New Jersey, has a seat at the table, is able to have our voices heard about the challenges that we face, whether that's about transportation, the lack of public transit, infrastructure challenges, small business support that we need, so many other things that, I feel like, we're ready to make sure that, we can be able to not just hope that somebody pays attention to our part of New Jersey, but instead demand it and make it happen by having a seat in the U.S. Senate. So I'm grateful to this. It's been a really remarkable experience going all over the state of New Jersey and having this chance to be able to engage 9 million people. Obviously, it's been a lot, and that's why I'm grateful for the Democrats in Cape May and throughout New Jersey for stepping up and helping me spread the word. So I'm grateful to be on here. I think they're going to call votes in just a little bit, but happy to answer a question or two if anybody's got it. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you, Congressman. I'd like to start with Michelle Post from the Atlantic City Press. Mrs. Post, do you have any questions for the Congressman?
Sure. Could you talk a little bit about how you felt about not being made the interim senator? Do you feel like that's a real disadvantage, or do you feel like it doesn't matter that much?
Oh no, it's not something I thought about. I never, I never really, like I said, never even imagined being a U.S. senator or running for this. So the fact that, I can hopefully win this outright on my own 2 feet on November 5th is really exciting. So whatever my start date is not what I'm focused on. It's the fact that hopefully I will, for at least 6 years, if not longer, be able to serve as a U.S. senator. So I'm just excited to get to work. But in the meantime, I want to really earn this vote. I want to earn this seat from the people. And that's what it's always been about.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congressman, can you talk a little bit about your views on mental health awareness and the need for what you see as the need for an increase in if there's a need for an increase in resources there, or refocus what we have, or what you think the priority should be in that area?
Yeah. No, I appreciate you mentioning this because this is something that I've thought a lot about and been working hard on. 2 things in particular. I am the ranking member on the Military Personnel Subcommittee in our Armed Services Committee. So this is the committee that oversees healthcare for our troops, for our military families. And through that, as well as the work that I've been doing for veterans, it's just become so clear that we're not meeting the moment when it comes to mental health support. I mean, veteran suicide, it continues to be a major scourge that, we have to take more seriously. And the challenges that we're seeing with PTSD, with traumatic brain injury and other problems that we're seeing with our military, I've been trying to surge the support for our military, for our veterans on mental health. And it's not just about, thinking, it's not just about thinking in terms of national security, but this is a societal problem now in a much bigger sense. And the other way that I've been spending a lot of time focused on this, and today I was at a community college at RCBC, the Rowan College in Burlington County, because we're having huge problems when it comes to mental health with our youth in our country right now. I mean, I talked to teachers and school administrators. We're talking about elementary school kids, middle school kids that are having suicidal ideation, not able to get the kind of resources they need to. And I very much believe that that needs to be a major focus in our country to be able to meet this moment. And it's tough. I don't feel like we're putting the kind of energy that we need to. We don't even have the number of mental health providers as a country that we need to be able to meet this moment. So there's a lot more work that we can do. And frankly, I do believe that we can do it in a bipartisan way. I really do feel like mental health is one of those places where we should be able to put aside political differences and say, for the good of the country, this is something that all of us see in our own lives, in our communities.
Thank you. Do you think that we would be able to get the 60 votes in the Senate to codify Roe in the next Congress?
You're not going to be able to get 60 votes, but what we hope is that we can have a Democratic majority in the House of Representatives to get 218 votes there. And then if we have a Democratic majority in the Senate, we can hopefully have the kind of filibuster reform needed to be able to pass what's called the Women's Health Protection Act, which is what would codify Roe. And then we need a Kamala Harris presidency to sign that into a law. We were very close just 2 years ago. We were a Joe Manchin and a Kirsten Sinema away from being able to, pass and codify the Women's Health Protection Act. So, it's doable. We just need to be able to get the majorities that we need to. So that's what I'm hoping that we can help deliver.
Let me just ask you a follow-up on that. How far do you see the changes in the Senate procedures with the 60 vote threshold going?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know. I don't know exactly, exactly what's going to happen on November 5th. But if the Democrats have 50 votes plus Kamala in the White House, we'll have the tie break. I do think you're going to see a big push to try to make, some reforms for certain types of challenges that are out there that I think are, constitutional harm challenges. So, voting rights is something that we've talked about in terms of being able to have a reform to be able to get through, codifying abortion rights, reproductive rights, also universal background checks for gun safety. I think those are three things that a lot of Americans are overwhelmingly supportive of. And those are ones that, I think many of us would feel comfortable, trying to make the reforms necessary. But again, none of that is going to be able to make a difference unless we are able to hold the Senate majority, unless we're going to be able to have the majority in the House and Kamala in the White House. So that's why it's so urgent that we take every step we can to be able to protect our democracy.
Right. Hey, thank you very much, Congressman. We appreciate your time and taking the time to share your views with us.
Yeah, no, thanks everybody. Please, we're 49 days away from Election Day. Let's give it everything we got for Joe, for me, and for others, for Kamala, of course. So let's go make sure we're engaged. I'm going to have to go hustle and run to the House floor for these votes, but thanks for letting me jump on and say a few words. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Good luck,
to
Andy.
you.
Thank
We're
you.
right behind you.
Oh, I know you are. Thank you. Take care.
Take care.
Okay. Joe, are you still with us?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Did you have anything you wanted to bring up on a follow-up?
Well, look, it was interesting to see the congressman speak about codifying Roe. And I think that's what my opening remarks were all about. I think we have such a wonderful opportunity here in New Jersey. Second, it's kind of flipping the House blue is the first order of business. It's kind of like a prophylactic. This is going to protect us against some of the excesses that we could see from an authoritarian Trumplican presidency, or even an assault on denying Kamala Harris the presidency after she gets an electoral college win. I mean, it's vital. But I hope that not long after we flip the House and we have those protections in place, we realize that we also did something I'm hesitate to say unique, but something we don't see very often, which is removing someone who has an extreme position with someone who is more collaborative, someone who recognizes the possibility of the fallibility of their own positions, someone who is going to respect contrary opinions by anyone on the other side who's willing to do the same. This is the way we actually make progress. You know, one of the Jefferson said we should have the wisdom to do what good we can when we cannot do all we wish, right? And it's such a prime example we see in the immigration bill that was thwarted, right? We need to make progress. We should challenge Republicans who are against codifying Roe by taking steps to put in what protections they might seek to prevent or to protect against unnecessary late-term abortions. But we can never concede our ideals. We must make sure that we always maintain protections for those late-term abortions that are necessary, because every one of those are tragedies, right? The idea that late-term abortions involve healthy fetuses in healthy women is entirely a fiction. So long as we have the protections in place that women will need, we should work across the aisle, because the status quo is causing so much harm that we have to do what we can to make progress. And I am not one who would like to see the filibuster go away, because then we get in a situation like we were in what's called the critical period between the Revolution and the Constitution. It's when we were actually fighting violently with each other, creditors versus debtors, merchants versus farmers, urban folk versus rural folk. And we saw alternating majorities pass laws, overturn laws in a way that James Madison called the multiplicity and mutability of laws were the twin evils of vicious legislation, right? So the laws that endure are the ones that can get very large majorities, and we should do everything we can to make that happen. So forgive me, there's probably a little bit of naivete of a first-time candidate, but I'm going to cling to that as long as I can.
No, that's perfectly fine. Could you do one thing for us here as we begin to wrap up? Could you sum up for the voters of the second district why we should choose you over your opponent and vote for you?
Well, look, my top priorities are about passing legislation to protect to restore Roe and vindicate a woman's right to choose. That's essential. I want to be a strong voice for making the essentials of life more affordable. I'm talking about healthcare and housing and education and childcare. I have, in speaking to the new Democratic coalition, I found a lot of like-minded Democrats who see how our policy of the past few decades has been misguided and actually has been constraining the supply of these essential services and actually fomenting excess inflation in those areas. I think we can do wonderful work to try to make those essentials more affordable. And frankly, I want to work with private industry, with state government, with higher education, so the federal government can collaborate to try to bring some of the $450 billion plus of federal stimulus that the Biden administration has made available in the CHIPS Act and the Inflation Reduction Act and the Infrastructure Act to South Jersey, who needs it desperately. We have an incumbent who is just so divisive that the idea of collaboration among multiple entities is just impossible to imagine. His rhetoric is just so divisive. So those are my priorities, and I think they are distinct from what we see in the incumbent. And I hope in addition to that, the basic idea that we need to be mindful of our basic democratic traditions. I'm greatly alarmed by an incumbent who voted to deny the last presidential election, one who is unwilling to say that he'll support the results of the current election, one who supports a candidate who uses such mean-spirited rhetoric around immigrants, one who talks about dividing us by religion, talks about Christians being under siege. All of this is incredibly harmful to the cohesiveness of our society. So these are the areas that I'd like to continue to stress for people to consider going into November.
Okay. Thank you very much. Very well put. We appreciate that. And we appreciate your time tonight, your views. And I want to thank you for coming on with us tonight. I know you have another obligation to go to. So on behalf of the Cape May County Regular Democratic Organization, I just want to say that we are proud to endorse Kamala Harris for president, Andy Kim for United States Senate, and Joe Salerno for United States House of Representatives in the 2nd District, probably one of the biggest districts, if not the biggest district in the state geographically. Joe goes from the ocean to the river, so he is all over the place. These are the people who will move us forward. And what about Tim Walz as our next vice president? So these are great folks. I want to also remind everyone to go to www.cmcdems.com for information on our Get Out the Vote effort. We are actively involved in a GOTV campaign. So again, that's www.cmcdems.com for information on our Get Out the Vote effort. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we go tonight. On Tuesday, October the 8th, we will be hosting another Zoom presentation titled Project 2025. Understand its threat to our freedoms and let's sound the alarm. Our presenter will be Rose Traficante, who has given several presentations around Cape May County. This event will be just a little bit different, though. It will be a conversation between Rose and one of our members, one of our Democratic members, discussing specific threats and dangers in Project 2025 and how they could impact us as individuals and as a country. So even if you've heard Rose give one of her talks before, I don't think you'll want to miss this. So put that in your calendar, Tuesday, October 8th, beginning at 6 p.m. And you'll be able to sign up for that within the next couple of days at www.cmcdems.com. So don't forget that. So on behalf of our technical staff, the leadership committee, our county chair, Marie Bliston, thank you all for joining us tonight. Let's get out there and work hard, support our candidates, volunteer, and if something needs to be done, let's work, because when we work, we win. Good night, and thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you for your
Bye-bye.
time and
Good luck,
attention.
Bye-bye.
Joe.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good
Being
luck,
here.
Joe.
We're right behind you.